I don't remember falling asleep, but I remember waking up. It was 2:43 a.m., and my head felt like someone had cracked a wine bottle across it. My tongue was dry, my limbs heavy like I'd been pulled underwater. The bedroom was mostly dark except for the faint blue glow from the digital clock on Michael's side of the bed. But he wasn't there. I pushed myself up dizzy and confused. My heart pounded like I had run a marathon, though I hadn't moved at all. And then I saw him, Michael, sitting on the armchair across the room, still in his shirt from dinner, unmoving, watching me. For a moment, I thought maybe he was just checking on me. Maybe I'd had a nightmare. Maybe I'd said something in my sleep. But he didn't speak. He just stared. Then, thinking I was still asleep, I heard him whisper so quiet I might have missed it if not for the silence in the room. It should have worked by now. The words crawled across my skin like ice. I froze. I didn't say a word. I let my head fall back against the pillow. I closed my eyes and breathed slow, shallow breaths like I had before. And I listened so still, so quiet. My own pulse felt deafening. I don't know how long he sat there. Eventually, he got up. I heard the creak of the floorboard near the doorway, the soft snick of the bedroom door closing, and only then did I allow myself to cry. But even as the tears came, I knew one thing. Whatever was happening, this was not just in my head. Something was very, very wrong. We've been married for 17 years. Long enough for the wedding photos to fade, but not long enough for the hurt to. Michael and I weren't always like this. There was a time when we'd dance barefoot in the kitchen when he'd bring me sunflowers just because when I'd wake up to coffee already brewing and his tie half knotted as he kissed me goodbye. But time wears on everything, especially silence. We didn't fight. We didn't scream. We just stopped reaching for each other. Dinners became quiet affairs. His eyes always fixed on his phone or the evening news. When I spoke, he nodded politely, but I could tell he wasn't really listening. At some point, I stopped talking altogether. I think the thing about emotional distance is that you don't realize you're drowning in it until you try to stand up and the floor's already gone. Michael had built a life of routine. He was up at 600, gone by 700, home by 5:30. He poured the same whiskey at night, read the same financial blogs, watched the same news anchor drone on about the market. I used to believe that was comfort. Now I think it was camouflage. Because looking back, there were signs, small ones. He changed his passwords, twice. He started locking his phone, something he never did before. He suddenly became obsessed with supplements, natural sleep aids, and online health forums. He kept telling me I was forgetful. You already said that. We talked about this. Are you okay, Nat? And I believed him, because I wanted to believe that the distance between us was normal, that this was what marriages eventually became, quiet, companionable shadows of their younger selves. But after that night, after hearing those 6 whispered words, I started to question everything. It should have worked by now. What had he meant? What was supposed to work? And why, when I looked into his eyes the next morning across the breakfast table, did I feel like I was sitting across from a stranger wearing my husband's skin? Now that I think about it, the night before I woke up dizzy and disoriented wasn't ordinary. Michael had made dinner. That sentence might not mean much to most people, but in our house it was unusual enough to raise eyebrows. He hadn't cooked in nearly 4 years, not since the night he nearly burned the roast and swore off the kitchen forever. But that night, he lit candles, made salmon with a honey glaze, opened a bottle of red. Just felt like treating you, he said, sliding my plate in front of me with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I was flattered at first. We sat across from each other, the soft music of some generic Spotify jazz station filling the air. We talked about work. Sort of. I told him about the new director at the library, the one with the funny laugh and obsession with labeling things in 4 different colors. He smiled. I mentioned Irene, who had invited me to a weekend art fair. He nodded. But there was something in his expression, just a flicker, that made me pause. His eyes weren't on me. They were on my glass. I noticed it when I reached for my wine. He blinked, swallowed, then looked away too quickly. It could have been nothing, but it wasn't. He kept pouring, topping off my glass even when I said I was fine. Just a little more, he insisted. It's a great vintage. Pairs perfectly. I remember the way the wine tasted, just a bit too sweet. Almost syrupy. I also remember how he didn't drink much himself. A few sips, maybe. Then he pushed his glass aside. When I asked why, he said he had an early meeting. Wanted to stay sharp. So I drank more than I meant to. Not a lot. Not enough to feel drunk. But just enough for my cheeks to flush and my body to feel heavy as we moved to the couch. We watched a documentary, something about art theft. I don't remember how it ended. In fact, I don't remember going upstairs. I just remember a moment on the couch. His hand brushing mine. The weight of sleep dragging me down. And Michael whispering, "I'll carry you up." That's the last thing I heard before waking up at 2:43 a.m. with a headache like a hammer and a husband whispering something far more chilling. I woke up to the smell of fresh toast and eggs. The sun was already high, filtering through the blinds, and the bedside clock read 9:12 a.m. I never slept that late, especially not after just 2 glasses of wine. My head still ached, not as sharply as the night before, but with that dull, lingering fog that made everything feel slow, like I was moving through warm honey. I sat up, pressed my hands to my temples, and tried to remember. The couch, the documentary, his hand on mine, the whisper, the chair. It should have worked by now. I touched the spot behind my ear where it felt sore. A tiny bruise, maybe. I wasn't sure. My thoughts were disjointed. Downstairs, Michael hummed. When I entered the kitchen, he smiled and said, "Hey, Sleeping Beauty. You were out cold last night. I had to practically carry you to bed." I managed a nod, still watching him. He poured me coffee, slid a plate of eggs across the table. "Everything okay?" I stared at him. My husband of 17 years who stood barefoot in front of me as if nothing had happened. "Yeah," I said slowly. "Just weird dreams." "Wine'll do that," he chuckled. But I hadn't drunk that much, and I knew it. That afternoon, while he went to the hardware store, I did something I'd never done before. I snooped. I opened the drawer beside his desk, looked in his gym bag, checked behind the bathroom mirror. Nothing. I even sniffed the wine glasses still drying on the rack. Mine smelled faintly sweet. His barely had a trace. I looked in the trash, found the cork, the label, the foil seal. Nothing obviously wrong. But then I found my phone under the couch cushion. Odd, since I always kept it by the nightstand. I checked my health app. It showed no movement from 9:51 p.m. until 2:43 a.m. Nothing. Like I'd been sedated. Like I'd disappeared from my own life for nearly 5 hours. And suddenly a quiet, terrifying realization settled in the pit of my stomach. This wasn't sleep. "You've just been stressed lately," Michael said, gently brushing a hand over my shoulder. We were sitting on the back patio late Sunday afternoon watching the trees shift in the breeze. I had finally worked up the courage to say something carefully. "Something's wrong, Michael," I'd told him. "I've been feeling out of it, like I'm not in control of my body." He nodded slowly with that therapist-like patience I'd started to resent. "Maybe it's hormonal," he said. "You've said you've had trouble sleeping. You're getting headaches. Could be perimenopause." I read about it. "Starts around your age, right?" I blinked. "That's not," I began. He interrupted. "Or your thyroid. Or maybe it's work stress. You've had those new shifts at the library, haven't you? I stared at him. Michael, this feels different. I think something happened to me that night. He tilted his head. You mean the night you passed out after dinner? I paused. He said it so casually. Right, I said carefully. That night. He leaned forward. Nat, I would never hurt you. You know that, right? I didn't answer. He smiled. You know what I think? I think your mind is playing tricks on you, and maybe we need to get ahead of it. Make a doctor's appointment. Rule some things out. There it was, the subtle shift. From concern to control. From listening to leading the narrative. I wanted to scream. Instead, I nodded. That night, I sat in front of the bathroom mirror, brushing my teeth, trying not to cry. Because what if he was right? What if I was imagining things? What if I'd made a monster out of a man who was just trying to help? But deep down, beneath the doubt and the fog, something colder whispered back. Or what if you're finally seeing him for who he really is? It happened on a Tuesday. Michael had left his phone at home, something he never did. He texted me from his work laptop asking if I could bring it to him during lunch. But curiosity got the better of me before I even left the driveway. I know, it was wrong, but I was drowning in doubt, and this felt like oxygen. I picked up his phone, hands trembling slightly. It was locked, of course, but Michael had always been lazy with patterns. I tried the old L shape. It opened. Heart pounding, I opened the voicemail tab. I wasn't expecting to find anything. But then I saw one new message. Not from me, not work, unknown number. I pressed play. At first silence, then his voice. Hey, it's me. Everything's fine. She's starting to act a little strange, asking more questions than usual. But nothing to worry about. Just might need to push the timeline a bit. My breath caught. He laughed softly in the message, warm, familiar, intimate. She still trusts me. I just need her to keep drinking the wine. I froze. If it comes to it, I'll use the second option. I already have it ready. Then a long pause. I miss you. Can't wait to start fresh. Click. I dropped the phone like it burned me. I couldn't breathe. He hadn't just gaslit me. He hadn't just made me doubt my sanity. He was working with someone else. Planning. Coordinating. He had a second option. And he missed someone. Not me. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard his voice again. I just need her to keep drinking the wine. And the part that haunted me most, I already have it ready. Whatever it was, I had to find it. The next morning, once Michael left for work, I went into his study. He always kept it neat, borderline obsessive. Pens lined up, desk, spotless files in order. But it was the bookshelf I went for first. It looked ordinary hardcover thrillers, some old finance books, a framed photo of us at Niagara Falls from 10 years ago. The surface seemed undisturbed. But something about the third shelf made me pause. There was a copy of The Count of Monte Cristo that looked out of place. The dust pattern was slightly misaligned. The spine was pushed just a bit too far back compared to the others. I pulled it. Behind it, wedged between two books and the backboard of the shelf, was a small amber glass bottle. No label, just a child-proof cap and about 10 white tablets inside. My hands shook as I took it to the kitchen, laid it on the counter, and Googled everything I could. Round white pill sedative prescription, no label used to sedate quickly. After 30 minutes of cross-referencing pill imprints and forms, I found it. Acepromazine, used by vets to sedate large animals, not approved for human use. Side effects included loss of motor control, amnesia, dizziness, slowed heartbeat. In higher doses, unconsciousness. And in some rare cases, cardiac arrest. I stared at the bottle. This was the second option. This was the plan if the wine didn't work. He wasn't just trying to dull me. He was trying to erase me. I didn't confront him. Not yet. It took everything in me not to scream, not to run. But I knew if I wanted to be believed, if I wanted him stopped, I needed more than suspicion and a bottle of unlabeled pills. I needed him to expose himself. So I played along, smiled, laughed at his jokes. Let him think I had taken his advice to relax. 3 nights later, he opened another bottle of wine. "This one's from Napa," he said, pouring carefully. "Picked it up a few months back. Been saving it." "For what?" He smiled. "A night just like this." He handed me a glass. I took it, waited. Then, while he stepped into the kitchen to grab dessert, I poured half of it down the sink and topped off the glass with water to maintain the weight. He never noticed. We watched a movie I can't remember the title of. Something slow. His arm draped lazily across my shoulders. I pretended to grow drowsy. I blinked slow, let my body go limp. At 10:27 p.m., I fell asleep on the couch. What happened next would have terrified me had I not been waiting for it. Michael leaned over, gently lifted my wrist, checked my pulse, then leaned in closer and whispered, "Just a little longer, sweetheart. You're almost there." And then he smiled. Not a big smile, not a cartoon villain grin, a soft, satisfied one, the kind you give when a plan is finally working. He tucked a blanket over me, dimmed the lights, and sat back, watching me, waiting. And I stayed still, motionless. But this time, I was wide awake. The next time he poured wine, I was ready. He made steak that night. Rare, just the way he liked it. He set the table with folded napkins, lit a single candle, played one of those jazz playlists he used when he wanted to seem romantic. And of course, the wine. "This one's a Bordeaux," he said, pulling out the cork like a magician, revealing his final trick. "You'll love it." He poured 2 glasses, then turned to grab the salad from the kitchen. In those 6 seconds, I switched them. Effortless, like sliding puzzle pieces back where they belonged. When he returned, I was already seated, smiling. We toasted clink. He sipped. I pretended to. We ate. We talked. He seemed more at ease than I'd seen him in weeks, as if everything was falling into place, as if he thought I'd finally given up. After dinner, he suggested we move to the couch. "I'll grab the glasses," I offered, collecting both and making sure not to lose track of which was which. He drank again. Deeper, this time. A full sip, then another. 10 minutes passed, then 20. He began blinking more. His posture changed. He sank lower into the cushions, rubbing his temples. "You okay?" I asked, sweetly, settling beside him. "Just a little tired," he mumbled. "Wine's hitting hard." "I thought it was a smooth vintage," I said. He chuckled, slurring slightly. "Yeah, smooth." Then his eyes closed, his breathing slowed. And within 5 more minutes, Michael, my husband of 17 years, was passed out cold. On the couch, just like I had been. Only this time, I wasn't the one drifting into silence. I was the one watching. Michael's head tilted to the side. His hand, which had been resting loosely on his thigh, slipped off and dangled. He made a soft sound, half breath, half groan, then nothing. Complete stillness. His eyes didn't flutter. His lips didn't move. His chest barely rose. I sat motionless for a full minute, heart pounding in my ears, but not from fear, from clarity. I reached for my phone, slowly, quietly. I opened the camera, pressed record. I captured the wine glass still nearly full, captured his body slouched and inert, zoomed in on his face, eyes closed, mouth parted, color draining from his skin. Then I walked around to get his pulse. It was faint, but there. I zoomed in on the bottle on the table, the cork, the label, the timestamp on my phone in the corner of the screen. Everything documented. He thought he was the one playing chess, but I had flipped the board. I didn't call 911, not yet. because I needed one last thing. I walked upstairs, opened the cabinet above his desk, pulled out the amber bottle he thought I didn't know about, placed it beside his empty wine glass, snapped a photo. Then I walked back into the living room and stood there watching the man who once told me he'd love me forever lie completely vulnerable before me. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I simply whispered, "Now you know what it feels like." Then I picked up the phone. 911, what's your emergency? My husband collapsed, I said, steady and clear. He was drinking wine. He's unconscious, but breathing. I think he may have been drugged. There was a beat of silence on the other end. Then, is he responsive? No. Pulse is weak. No external injuries. Ma'am, can you stay on the line? I can. But I've also got something your responders are going to want to see. A bottle of unmarked pills and video footage. They arrived in less than 6 minutes. Paramedics rushed in, asked the usual questions, stabilized him. I handed them the pill bottle, the wine glass, and my phone. I told them about the voicemail he left, about the pills I found, about the patterns, his lies, his manipulation. They didn't doubt me. Not this time. I followed the ambulance to the hospital. I didn't cry. I didn't pace. I just sat there in the hard plastic waiting room chair, hands folded, watching the night stretch long across the lobby. At 1:17 a.m., a nurse came out. "He's awake," she said. "He's groggy, but stable." I nodded. "Do you want to see him?" I stood up. "I think I should." He was in room 213, hooked up to monitors, pale and sweating. When he saw me, he blinked fast, like trying to figure out if I was real. "Natalie, what happened?" His voice was dry. Croaky. "You tell me," I said softly, stepping inside. He swallowed. I must have mixed up the bottles." I raised an eyebrow. "That's one way to put it." Then the door opened again. A uniformed officer stepped in, followed by a woman in a navy blue suit with a notepad. "Mr. Graves," she said, "we have some questions for you." Michael looked at me, panic rising, and I just stepped aside, letting the truth walk in behind me. The name came up 2 days later, Vanessa Lang. The detective handed me a file. "She's 31, works at Braveridge Financial. That's the firm your husband used for consolidating your retirement accounts." I felt like the floor dropped beneath me. "He put our money in her firm. He moved over $420,000 in joint assets under a shell portfolio 6 weeks ago. Created a new trust. Guess who's listed as beneficiary? I didn't have to guess. Vanessa Lang. She wasn't just a mistress. She was the co-conspirator. Together, they had been slowly bleeding accounts, dry shifting funds, rewriting beneficiaries, forging signatures. The voicemail. It was for her. The second option he mentioned, that was likely the pills he'd planned to use on me. Quiet, untraceable. The kind of thing that would leave doctors shrugging and calling it an undetected heart condition. They'd planned it all. The withdrawals, the insurance policy update I didn't remember signing, the wine, the forgetfulness, the gaslighting. It was never about passion. It was about profit. He wanted a clean exit and a bigger bank account. And I was the only thing standing in his way. Until now. I walked into the law office on a Thursday morning, binder in hand. Inside printouts of every email, every transaction, every voice recording, screenshots, photos, the bottle, the wine label, his call logs, evidence. The receptionist led me to a walnut-paneled office where Elaine Foster Esquion extended a firm hand. "I read everything you sent me," she said. "He made a mistake coming after a woman who documents things this well. It took 2 hours to sort through the accounts, 3 days to freeze the shared assets, 5 days to issue a cease and desist on the trust fund in Vanessa Lang's name." A week later, we sat across from Michael and his attorney in a mediation room with glass walls and stiff chairs. He looked pale, smaller somehow. Gone was the cocky smirk. Elaine slid the documents across the table. These signatures are forged. These transfers are illegal. And these voice memos? They're admissible in court. Michael shifted in his seat. His lawyer didn't say a word. Elaine leaned forward. You won't be walking away with her money. You'll be lucky to walk away without handcuffs. And then she looked at me, gave me the floor. I met his eyes. You always said I wasn't good at paying attention, I said calmly. Turns out I just needed the right reason. He didn't speak. He didn't blink. He just sat there, the silence collapsing around him like a trap he'd set for someone else. The day before the pretrial hearing, I handed the keys to a realtor named Thomas and signed away the house on Brookside Lane. The same house where we planted tulips in the spring and argued over Christmas lights in the winter, where he whispered poison into my wine glass. I left the piano, took the books, took the photos of my parents, the ones he always said didn't match the decor, and I took the piece. I transferred the remaining funds, what was left of the savings, after Elaine clawed back the misappropriated accounts into an account only I could access. I bought a small cottage 3 states away near the water. Quiet. Blue shutters. A lemon tree out front. My name just mine on every utility bill, every deed, every mailbox. I told no one where I was going. Not my coworkers. Not even Irene. Michael would be indicted soon, but I wouldn't be there to watch it. Because the moment I left that mediation table, I stopped being the woman who needed closure. I didn't need to see him in handcuffs. I didn't need to hear him beg. I needed to be free. And freedom, real, untouchable. Freedom is when you walk away not to escape the past, but because it no longer defines your future. Some mornings, I still wake up at 2:43 a.m. Not from fear, just memory. The body doesn't forget what betrayal feels like. But now the room is quiet. The windows are open. The breeze smells like salt and rosemary. And there's no one watching me sleep. No second glass poured without me looking. No voice whispering in the dark. I make my own coffee. I go on long walks. I joined a local writing group, just 5 people in a bookstore on Tuesdays, but we laugh a lot. I keep the amber bottle in a locked box. Not because I need it, because it reminds me of what it took to believe myself again. To understand that being gaslit isn't a weakness. It's what happens when dangerous people mistake empathy for ignorance. The worst part of betrayal isn't the act itself, it's the silence it leaves behind. But I filled that silence with truth, with clarity, with the sound of my own voice strong again. If you're reading this or listening to it, I want you to know something. You're not crazy, you're not overreacting, and you're not weak for walking away from someone who swore they loved you, because sometimes love is a disguise, and survival is taking your story back.